evening, everyone. My name is Jamie. I'm the president of the New York Society of Health and Pharmacists. So we are in person and on the Zoom, and we'd like to welcome you guys all today. I'd like to introduce our speaker today. We have Dr. Juri Chung. She's a critical care clinical pharmacotherapy specialist at NYU Long Island Hospital. And one of her passions that I found when she was gifting me a really exciting gift as a preceptor last year was a skincare product that I had no idea about. So I was really excited to ask her more about it and found out that one of her passions is skincare and skincare products. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Juri Chung.
Thank you, Jamie, for the great introduction. So as Jamie mentioned, my name is Juri. I'm a critical care clinical pharmacotherapy specialist at NYU Long Island. And people will be thinking, oh, a critical care pharmacist talking about skincare, like, why? But as Jamie mentioned, skincare is one of my biggest passions. And I love to learn more about skincare every day as it comes out. And I thought it'd be a great idea to share my passions with everyone here, as well as everyone who are signed in on Zoom through Jamie's introduction. So today, yeah. So in terms of disclosures, I have no conflict of interest to disclose, and any products that I mentioned throughout this presentation are more for reference. So the objective of today's presentation is I'll be reviewing all the differences between skin types as well as skincare products. And I'll be also comparing and contrasting the differences between European skincare, Korean skincare, as well as Japanese skincare. And then I'll also be discussing and analyzing both harmful ingredients as well as trending ingredients that have been rising among the skincare industry. So before I talk or dive into more about the skincare world or the skincare industry, I wanted to briefly touch about the background about our skin. So our skin is actually the largest organ that comprises about 15% of our body weight, and it's composed of 70% water, 20% protein, 0.2% lipids, and other 3%, which are trace minerals and nucleic acids. Within our skin, there's actually three separate layers. So the epidermis, which is the outermost layer, the dermis, which is the middle layer, and the subcutis, or the hypodermis, which is the area where we would typically inject subcutaneous injections, and that's where our fat cells lie. So in terms of the epidermis actually has a lot of different types of cells embedded with them, and the two biggest ones are keratinocytes as well as melanocytes. So keratinocytes are the ones that produce keratin in our body, and melanocytes are the ones that produce melanin in our body. And when keratinocytes actually start to form, they're actually formed at the very top layer of the dermis, and once it starts to age, they will rise to the top of the epidermis and will appear at the stratum corneum, which is at the very skin of our, which is at the outermost layer of our skin. And once it reaches the stratum corneum, then they'll start to exfoliate as dead skin cells. So now I wanted to talk about our skin types. So for the members who are here at our CE presentation today, I just wanted a brief survey of about how many of you know what your skin type is. Okay. I would say about like half of us know what our skin type is. For those of you that may not know what your skin type is, I hope through this presentation you'll be able to find out what exactly your skin type is. So the first skin type I'll be talking about is normal skin. So normal skin is a well-balanced skin, and it's identified as having very smooth texture with fine pores, and people with normal skin don't technically always have sensitivity issues or no blemishes or have breakouts. And in order to just manage normal skin, it's just recommended to stay hydrated, make sure you wear sunscreen, make sure you moisturize your skin, and to remove makeup at bedtime before you go to bed. In terms of dry skin, so dry skin is identified as having flaky and rough skin. People often will have uneven texture, as well as you might feel your skin feeling a little bit more tight, or it might be a little bit more itchy. And the causes of dry skin can be just genetics, and that's not something we can control. But it can also be seasonal, and it can have more impact. So during the winter, when there's not enough moisture in the air, our skin is more prone to becoming more dry. In terms of age, as we age, our skin tends to become a little bit more dry, as well as if you're taking long showers, you're basically taking away the moisture away from your skin, so then your skin tends to become dry. So in order to manage dry skin, it's important to stay hydrated, wearing sunscreen, as well as to moisturize your skin. Then moving on to oily skin. So that's on the other spectrum of dry skin. And oily skin is typically identified as being greasy, as well as having really large pores. And people with oily skin are prone to having breakouts. And this can be due to a lot of different causes. It can also be due to genetics, which we cannot control, but it can also be due to climate. So and the climate meaning like more of like a humidified environment. So such as like Florida, where it's super humid in the summer, and people with oily skin, you'll have a lot of sebum production on your face. It can also be due to hormonal changes, or if you're doing too much exfoliation, because too much exfoliation can also lead to an increased sebum production. So management for oily skin actually is about the same. It's also washing your face, making sure you stay hydrated, as well as to making sure you're moisturizing on a regular basis. Then comes combination skin. So combination skin is a combination between oily skin and dry skin. So combination skin is unique because you'll have a lot of oil production on the T-zone, which is around your forehead and on your nose, as well as under your chin. So if you have combination skin, you'll see a lot of breakouts under your chin over here or up at the top. But where your face is over here, it basically is a lot more dry. So then the causes of combination skin is also due to genetics, but it's also due to several products as well as the climate. And for management of combination skin, we always recommend to use oil-free products as well as to wear sunscreen. And you want to consider exfoliating once in a while to make sure you're removing the excess sebum and using a gentle cleanser. Then this isn't really, I guess, a skin type out of the four main skin types, but people have identified their skin as being a lot more sensitive. And that's when you are having itchy type skin or redness, and if you're experiencing extreme dryness in the winters, then you can consider yourself as having a sensitive skin. And the causes of having sensitive skin can be just because you have dry skin. It can be due to because you're having rosacea or irritant contact dermatitis. And the biggest management with patients with people with sensitive skin is just avoiding alcohol-based products and retinoids as well. So then diving into the various different types of skincare products. So there are three main required steps that we always recommend people, which is cleansing your face, toning to balance your skin, and moisturizing to provide hydration and to provide softening of the skin. So the cleanser is the most basic and essential daily step in the skincare routine. And we recommend to cleanse twice a day, once in the morning and once at night, but consider doing double cleansing during the night. And depending on what your skin type is, you may want to consider different formulations. So if you're more of an oilier, if you have an oily skin, then you want to consider using foaming liquids. If you have dry skin, you might consider using anything with a cream or lotion, and that's because there's a lot more ingredients that are embedded to provide a lot more hydration compared to those with oily skin. Then toner is a step that's performed after cleansing, but before anything else. And the purpose of the toning is to help remove all the excess makeup, the dirt, anything that, despite having cleansed your face, have left behind. And toning actually balances the pH on our skin, and because the skin may be disrupted due to environment stressors, and it also provides an environment for bacterial growth and reactiveness if it's not toned properly and if the balance is not maintained properly. And in terms of the moisturizer, as I mentioned before, the purpose of a moisturizer is to hydrate and soften the skin, and also help us in preventing water loss through the outer skin layer. So if you have oily skin types, the type of moisturizer that you should be considering is a gel moisturizer because it's not as heavy. Compared to those who may have dry skin, you might want to consider using a cream, which has a lot more it's more oil-based and has a heavier texture than a regular lotion. Then another step we can consider using is actually a serum. So where a serum would lie in the skincare routine is actually putting on the serum right before a moisturizer. And so the purpose of a serum is actually to target various skin concerns, whether that be anti-aging, whether that be hydrating, whether that be exfoliating. And you can use multiple different types of serums for different types of skincare concerns. But you want to watch out for ingredients that may require application at a specific frequency. So for example, retinol. Retinol is something that we should be putting on during the morning. It should be considered put at nighttime because retinol can interact with the sun and you can have a lot more, it can turn redness and cause more breakouts. Another step you can also consider is exfoliator. So exfoliation is to help remove the excess dead skin cells to help make our skin look a lot more brighter and more firm. And it also helps to improve skin's overall texture and tone. So there's actually two different types of exfoliation, which is physical and chemical. And chemical is performed through various acids and fruit enzymes, whereas physical exfoliation is just containing rough materials. So if you have ever walked into CVS or Walgreens and seen like St. Ives peach body scrub, like that's physical exfoliation. And it's recommended to perform exfoliation about 1 to 2 times a week. So eye cream is also another step in the skincare routine that you can consider adding. And it's a cream that's specifically formulated to be applied around the eye. And it's also to target under eye concerns. And this is because we recommend it because a lot of the ingredients that are in the eye creams are to target dark circles, fine lines, and under eye puffiness, as well as creepiness. And the last skincare step I wanted to talk about is about face masks. So face masks actually contain much higher concentration of active ingredients, and you wanted to add it on to your skincare routine on a weekly basis. So if you've ever walked in, whether it be Sephora or even a Korean beauty store, you may have encountered sheet masks, and those are one-time use only. And the max time limit that you would use for sheet mask is actually 20 minutes because the more you use it, it starts to dry out your skin. But the good thing about sheet masks is that it's ingredient specific for a specific target that you want to, for a specific skincare concern that you want to target, and you actually don't need face washing afterwards. You can just dab it on and call it a day. Whereas clay masks or charcoal masks, those are actually good for oily skin because the purpose of those masks are to remove the excess sebum, excess oil that is on your face, and it can also target at spot treatment for areas with breakouts. But the downfall between the clay mask and the charcoal mask is after a period of time, you have to wash it off before you go to bed. So then I wanted to talk briefly about what the differences between Korean skincare, Japanese skincare, and European skincare is. So first, talking about Korean skincare or K-beauty. So the purpose of K-beauty, or what makeup companies or skincare companies target when making products, is their focus is to achieve flawless skin. And they favor whiter, creamier looking skin. So if you encounter a lot of Korean people or patients, you might see that even though they might be tan all over their body, their face may be a little bit more whiter compared to everyone else. And Korean skincare actually can go up to a 10-step skincare routine, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But the products that are embedded within Korean skincare products are focused a lot on the ancient herbal remedies, as well as natural ingredients such as like rice, blueberry, and green tea. So here is the 10-step Korean skincare routine. It first starts with dual cleansing at night, which is with an oil or foam cleanser or cream cleanser, depending on what your skin type is. Then you want to consider adding on an exfoliant 1 to 2 times a week, followed by a toner. Now, a lot of people get confused between what the difference between essence and a serum is. So what the difference between essence and a serum is essence is actually a much lighter version of a serum. It doesn't have as much active ingredients compared to a serum, but some people, depending on how it always depends on how your skin takes in all the products, because Sometimes if you put too much on your skin, you might feel that it might have a heavy weight on your skin. So you might want to consider not opting for one or the other. So either the essence or the serum. Then you want to consider doing a sheet mask 1 to 2 times a week, or if you have a specific target area that you want to target, then we always recommend putting on an eye cream because we always want to, get rid of fine lines within our eyes. And then putting on the moisturizer is always the important last step of the day. And in the daytime, you want to consider adding on a sunscreen, and at nighttime, a night cream. So the Japanese skincare, their focus is what's called a mochi hala. Is everyone familiar with mochi at all? Yeah, no. So mochi is a very chewy rice cake. I guess that's how I would explain it. It's basically the purpose of Japanese skincare is we want to make sure our skin is plump and youthful. And they do a skincare approach what's called a Marie Kondo approach, and that it only involves a 4-step skincare routine, and their ingredients are much more natural and traditional. So a common Japanese brand that we see a lot in stores, and for example at Sephora, is actually Tatcha. So Tatcha is a Japanese skincare brand, and if you look at what ingredients that they use like rose or lily or even green tea to their products. So the Marie Kondo approach for Japanese skincare involves basically the double cleansing, the toning, serum, and moisturizing. Then lastly, European skincare, their focus is much more on hydration and coverage. So the goal for them is to provide a more clear and smoother skin compared to Korean skincare or Japanese skincare. So they don't really have a definite skincare approach within their regimens, but in terms of European skincare, they rely a lot heavily on good quality foam cleanser as well as moisturizer. And if you've seen French skincare products, their products are highly focused on hydration and anti-aging. So now diving into a lot of different ingredients that are utilized in skincare. So just wanted to briefly go over the brief history of how skincare developed. So back in the ancient world, like ancient Rome or Greece or Egypt, ancient Rome was actually a very fan of face masks. So their ingredients that they would use is like olive oil, rosebud, or even rose water, or even cucumber. Whereas ancient Egypt was a lot of fond of skin cleansing. Then we fast forward to the Renaissance age, which is like the 14th century, and the focus during the Renaissance age was having a fair skin. So they would use a lot of sour milk or ground wheat in their products. Then in the Victorian era, they started using ammonia for eye treatment and topical arsenic to remove pimples and for curing of freckles. And in the 20th century, which is in the 1900s, in the 1920s, bronze suntans were when it first came about because they thought that having a very good suntan was part of the color of skin for being fashionable. And the 1950s and beyond, that's when there was a rise of more herbal remedies and natural skincare. So I have listed a couple of toxic chemicals to avoid in skincare products. Majority of the time, the reason is because they are carcinogens and they can actually cause cancer. So formaldehyde, such as paraformaldehyde or methylene glycol, are known to be a carcinogen. Quaternium-15 is actually quaternium-15 is what becomes formaldehyde and it becomes a carcinogen as well. The phthalates and the parabens actually would interfere with our hormones and our reproductive system. And the long-chain per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, as well as the MNO, phenol, and enediamines are also carcinogens as well. So then I wanted to talk about trending ingredients. I think this is the area where everyone is very interested in. I haven't listed all the trending ingredients, but the most common ones that have been trending these days are acids, so specifically AHA, DHA, and PHA, and hyaluronic acid. Ginseng, which is embedded within a lot of Korean and Japanese skincare products. Centella Asiatica, vitamins, specifically C and E, and Snail mucin. So first, going over acids in general. So acids are a skincare ingredient that's commonly used for exfoliation. And what they do is they're actually loosen the fluid that binds cells to the upper layers of the skin to help make our smooth look more smoother and brighter surface. So depending on how big of a skincare junkie you are, you're maybe familiar with the two main types of acids, which is the AHA, the alpha hydroxy acids, or the BHA, the beta hydroxy acids. But within the last year or two, PHAs, it has been the trending acid, which is the polyhydroxy acid, which I'll be going over on the next slide. So AHA is actually a water-soluble type of acid. And what it does is it exfoliates the outer layer of the skin, making it look more brighter and evening out the skin tone and stimulating a little collagen production. So common AHA acids are glycolic acid, lactic acid, citric acid, and malic acid. And this type of acid is actually best for those who have normal to dry skin. Compared to BHA, which is an oil-soluble acid, the good thing about BHA for oily acne-prone skin is because it actually penetrates deeply into the clogged pores, and it actually binds to the semen, which is the oil. And so a common BHA that we're probably familiar with is salicylic acid, because if you see products in CVS or Walgreens, any acne products have salicylic acid in them. Now, PHA is the one acid that has been trending over the past couple of years, and it is also a water-soluble acid similar to AHA. So like AHA, it also exfoliates the outer dead skin, and it evens out the skin tone as well as the texture. And it's actually best for dry and sensitive skin. But technically for PHAs, any type of skin can use it, and this is more so because the molecule of a PHA is so big that it doesn't penetrate deeply into your skin. So I'm talking about hyaluronic acid. So hyaluronic acid actually doesn't fit into any of those three types of acids. So hyaluronic acid is a sugar molecule that's naturally in our skin, and it helps to increase hydration by binding water to collagen and basically just trapping it into the skin. So it's important that we consider using hyaluronic acid as we age, because as we age, we lose a lot of hydration in our skin, as well as during harsh weather. So specifically during the winter, when the air during the winter is a lot more dry, you want to consider using hyaluronic acid to keep the hydration in your skin. So it's actually great for all skin types, but the skin type that would benefit the most from using hyaluronic acid is dry skin. So the next ingredient I wanted to talk about is ginseng. It's also known as root of immortality. Everyone might be familiar with ginseng because it is an herb that we typically use for traditional Chinese medicine. And this is because it helps to stimulate and relax our nervous system while improving our stamina. The active ingredient that's embedded within ginseng is the ginsenoside. And if you're familiar with ginseng, some of the ginsengs as they age have a lot more roots. And the older the root it is, the more amounts of, or the higher concentration of ginsenosides there are within ginseng. So the specific reason people start to use ginseng or have embedded in ginseng in the skincare products is because they target aging as well as dark circles, because their benefits are having antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties, and they help to increase oxygenation and circulation to skin cells for a healthier glow. So Centella Asiatica is the next skincare ingredient, and this is actually an herb that's primarily grown in Asia. And the active compound in Centella Asiatica is metacastoside. So they've actually tested metacastoside in humans, which have shown to help with protecting of the skin. But when they tested specifically Centella Asiatica in mice, they've also have shown a lot more wound healing properties when using Centella Asiatica in rats. So the effects of Centella Asiatica is helping to calm the inflammation, as well as to encourage the production of collagen and improving skin hydration. So this is a very beneficial ingredient for those with sensitive skin, because it will help with the irritation of the skin. And so Centella Asiatica you'll find in a lot of infused products, such as, if you're familiar with the brand Dr. Jart, they have a Cicapair line, so those are all Centella Asiatica infused products. The next ingredient I want to talk about is vitamin C. So vitamin C is a potent antioxidant that can help neutralize free radicals. It also helps to regenerate our skin as well as to repair the damaged skin cells. So the most stable and effective form of vitamin C in the skincare products is ascorbic acid, or also referred to as L-ascorbic acid within the skincare ingredient line. But you may also find vitamin C labeled as tetrahexyl ascorbate, magnesium ascorbophosphate, or methylsilyl ascorbate when you look at the skincare ingredient label. So concentration of the vitamin C can actually vary between 5 to 20%, but in those with sensitive skin, it's actually recommended to start at a lower concentration to see how well you react to it. So the best formulation of using vitamin C is actually using a serum, because it targets specific areas right before the moisturizer. But the downfall of using vitamin C during the daytime is you want to make sure you use it with sunscreen, because if you don't use it with sunscreen, it can actually irritate the skin, cause more redness to appear. So if you're not a person who likes to use sunscreen during the daytime, you might want to consider using it more during the nighttime. And what the benefit of using vitamin C is also in that it inhibits skin's melanin production, which helps preventing the formation of dark spots as well as hyperpigmentation. The vitamin E is also an antioxidant, and you'll often find two forms of vitamin E embedded in products, and they will be labeled as either alpha-tocopherol or tocopherol acetate. And tocopherol acetate is a natural form of vitamin E and has twice the potency of alpha-tocopherol. So the benefit of using vitamin E is that it protects the lipid barrier, helps to retain moisture, as well as have healing properties. And also has photoprotective properties when you actually use it in combination with vitamin C. So when combined with vitamin C as well as used under sunscreen, it actually provides 4 times the protection of just sunscreen alone. But you might want to not consider using it in those who have combination to oily skin, because it can actually start to clog the pores. So it's not always an ingredient that we look for in those who have combination to oily skin. Lastly, I wanted to talk about snail mucin, which I think a lot of people are like, what? But snail mucin is actually basically a mucus from a snail. And it's typically produced when snails become agitated or stressed. So the most biologically active form is derived from the Cryptomophilus aspersomolis, which is a brown garden snail. And snails in general have 8 different types of secreting glands, which secrete 4 types of mucus, which are the protein, calcium, pigments, and the lipids. So I just want to briefly touch upon which secreting glands that snails have, and the first of which is mucinous gland, which helps to provide the restorative effect of the ingredient. The albuminous gland has the antibiotic effect. The salivary gland has the digestive and penetrative effects of exfoliation and deep cleaning. So snail mucin is actually rich in a lot of substances beneficial in our skin. So the most popular, which is hyaluronic acid, and which is famous in those who have dry skin. It also has copper peptides, glycoproteins, glycolic acid, and allantoin. And basically, snail mucin infused products can help to provide antimicrobial properties, to help to repair our skin, and as well as to provide hydration. So then the one type of skincare product I wanted to focus a little bit more on is actually sunscreen. Despite summer being over soon, sunscreen is something we should be wearing on a daily basis, whether it be the winter or the fall. So skin cancer in general is rising in the US, and per the CDC, they actually project about 100,000 new cases of skin melanomas in 2021. So now then I wanted to focus on the specific numbers. So it only takes about 20 minutes for your skin to become damaged by UV rays of the sun. And the amount we should be putting on our skin is actually 1 ounce of the sunscreen, which is equivalent to about 2 tablespoons. And between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is the prime time where the sun has the most damage on our skin if we don't wear sunscreen. So then there's actually two types of UV rays, the UVA ray and the UVB ray. So UV radiation in general is a part of natural energy that is produced by the sun. And it's the more, and it's actually a major risk factor because you have prolonged exposure to UV radiation. So unprotected exposure can lead to damage in our DNA and can cause genetic defects, skin cancer, and premature aging. So then what is really the difference between UVA and UVB? So UVA ray is the one that causes aging. And so also the one that causes tanning. So UVA rays are what is being used in tanning beds. And it's actually connected to broad spectrum protection and actually penetrates skin more deeply than UVB. UVB rays are the ones that actually cause sunburn. So UVB rays actually penetrate and damage the outermost layers of the skin. And it actually coincides to the SPF on the labels, which I'll be talking on the next slide. So the intensity of UVB rays actually fluctuate throughout the year. So it's more intense during the summertime, but these diminishes during the winter time. So a lot of our sunscreen products have what is called SPF, or the sun protection factor, and that's what we're most familiar with. So the sun protection factor is actually a measure of how long a sunscreen will protect our skin from UVB rays. And I emphasize UVB rays because that means it doesn't cover UVA rays, which cause aging. So, for example, SPF of 15 will actually only block about 93% of UVB rays, and SPF of about 50 will only block about 98% of UVB rays. Then we have what is called the PA grading system, or protection grade of UVA, and this is actually a measure of how long a sunscreen will protect our skin from UVA rays. And the rating system goes from 1+ to 4+. And the more plus signs there are, it means there's more UVA protection. Then I wanted to briefly talk about what FDA actually has proposed within their regulation in 2019 to make sure that sunscreens are safe and effective. So they have proposed specific grade status of active ingredients. So they say the good ingredients embedded in sunscreens is actually zinc oxide and titanium dioxide because they don't impact our skin or provide damage to our skin. Whereas the aminobenzoic acid and trolamine salicylate should not be embedded, it should not be incorporated to sunscreen ingredients in general. But then there's a lot of insufficient data for use in sunscreens with specific ingredients that is listed on this table. But actually 2 weeks ago, there was actually a study that came out that have looked into the ingredient octocrylene. So an octocrylene was embedded within a lot of chemical sunscreens, and it was a sunscreen ingredient that captured harmful UV rays before they can cause damage to the underlying skin cells. So the benefit of using octocrylene was that it was actually photostable. So it would lose only about 10% of its SPF protection after 95 minutes, which is great. But the downfall of that is that they actually identified this as to become a potential carcinogen when degraded to benzophenone. So now there's a whole news issue out there where a lot of the common sunscreen brands that we see on the market actually has octocrylene embedded with them, and they now have to remove all of these products that have this specific ingredient in them. Then they actually proposed requirements for specific dosage forms. So they said that the good dosage forms are anything that you can apply topically. So like oil, lotion, whether it be gel or even a sun stick. And sprays can actually be considered used for to be used safely as well. But the not safe items are ones that will be in white form or body wash form or shampoo, and there's just not enough data regarding powders, and this is subject to the particle size of the ingredients. They also actually proposed a new max SPF and broad spectrum requirements. So the old maximum was SPF 50+ because they didn't have any data supporting that anything beyond 50 was efficacy. But now the new maximum is now SPF 60+ because those sunscreens that were SPF 60 were found to have meaningful clinical benefit with them. So currently, products above SPF 80 are being proposed not to be marketed, but you may or may not still see these products on the market as of right now. Then talking about what is the difference between physical versus chemical sunscreen. So physical sunscreen only contains active mineral ingredients, which are the zinc oxide and the titanium dioxide. And the physical sunscreen, the good thing about physical sunscreen is it's easier for us to notice whether we have applied sunscreen on our skin because it leaves a white cast. It's actually less irritating for those with sensitive skin. But the downfall of physical sunscreen is that it's actually prone to wearing off very easily, as well as it has a more of a heavier and a thicker feel on our skin. Compared to chemical ingredients, which are infused with a lot of organic carbon-based compounds. And chemical ingredients and chemical sunscreen is actually very highly effective for broad spectrum protection. It's actually very light, so even though you would put a lot on your skin, you wouldn't feel that it's heavy at all. And also doesn't have a ghosting effect, so it doesn't leave a white cast in that matter. So the downfall of chemical sunscreen is that it can actually cause allergic reactions and irritations in those with sensitive skin. So then comes to why is Reef-based sunscreen. So Reef-based sunscreen actually only contains the ingredients of a physical sunscreen, which is the zinc oxide and the titanium dioxide. The most concerning chemical that would harm the reef in our ocean is the oxybenzone, and even at very low doses, it can actually cause damage. So in order to provide a safe environment for our coral reefs in our ocean, it's actually recommended not to use spray on sunscreen when you're at the beach, because when you're spraying on chemical sunscreen, it leaves all of that in the sand, and when the water washes away, it still damages all the coral reefs in the ocean. So then the question is there an expiration date on sunscreen? And so by the FDA, it's actually required to maintain its original strength even after 3 years, or at least 3 years. But some, depending on the manufacturer, they may actually have an expiration date on the back of their product. And once it's past the expiration date, it's actually recommended to be discarded. And then the last topic I wanted to talk about is how to read a skincare label. So sometimes skincare ingredient labels can be a lot, and I think the biggest thing that we focus is what does this product have or what are they promoting, which may be like right in the front of the product. But if you look at their ingredient label, it's actually listed from the highest to the lowest concentration. So anything that they want to specifically target with a specific skincare product, that specific ingredient will be the first or the second ingredient on the ingredient label. Then we have what is called a period after opening symbol. So this is how long a product is good for once opened. So I have an example of 36 months. So let's say today I got a new product and the period after opening symbol said 36 months, then I want to discard it after 3 years if I haven't, after 3 years. If it's beyond 3 years, then you might want to consider discarding the product. This information is also found closer to, it's usually found on either the skincare product or on the box that it comes in. Then the next thing I want to talk about is that the expiration date is actually attached to the batch or the lot numbers. So beauty products in general have a standard 3 to 5 year shelf life when it's not open, but not all batch numbers are straightforward. So for example, I have, might be a little hard to see, but I have a picture on the right-hand side and it actually has a batch number starting 18 to 800. So the 18 actually talks about when it was manufactured, which is 2018. But now there's a lot of cosmetic calculators out there where when you put in the batch number of a specific product, if you can't find a specific expiration date, it will actually tell you when it's manufactured, and it can help you determine the expiration date that way as well. Now a lot of products are focusing on being plant-based. So plant-based products will actually say so on the label. So there, for example, in this BioSense Squalene vitamin C rose oil, there's actually a small leaf-looking picture that says plant-derived squalene. So a lot of these plant-based products will say that they are plant-derived. The fifth one is cruelty products. So some people have concerns about these specific skincare products being tested on animals, and they don't want to use anything that has been tested on animals. So then in those specific skincare products, they'll label what is called a cruelty-free product, and it usually has a bunny like in the picture on the slide. And last but not least, fragrance-free versus unscented. So when we hear the word unscented, a lot of people think about, oh, then it doesn't have any fragrance, but that's actually not true. So fragrance-free means there's really no fragrance at all in that, within the skincare ingredient. But in an unscented, it's actually just addition of fragrances with no scent. So you may want to take a look more carefully if you have a lot more sensitive skin, because I know people with sensitive skin tend to react more to things with fragrance in them. So an unscented product may not necessarily mean that it's fragrance-free. And as mentioned before, it's actually a concern for those with sensitive skin or allergies. So the top takeaways I wanted to provide throughout this presentation is just making sure you know and understand what your skin type is before using any other product. If you know you have sensitive skin, if you react even with the minor irritation, it's actually best for you to test it on your skin before you start to use the product completely. And not all skincare routines fit all. So I talk about a 4-step skincare routine. I talked about a 10-step skincare routine, but that may not fit you very well. It's always finding about balance and finding out what works best for your skin. Then you want to select products with specific ingredients to target your specific skincare concerns. So if your concern is a lot more like irritation or redness, then you want to consider using skincare products that have Centella Asiatica in them. If anti-aging is of your concern, then you might consider using ginseng, products with ginseng in them. We also want to apply sunscreen on a daily basis to reduce our risk of cancer, skin cancer, and as well as being mindful of expiration dates when using new products. And that concludes the presentation, and I'll take any questions if there are any at this time. Oh, where do I begin? So the question is whether plant-based products are better than chemical products. I want to say that may not necessarily be true, because depending on what you're targeting, it may just require a little bit more chemical ingredients to. So I do want to say I am not a esthetician. But I want to say, but I think it just depends on what you prefer. So it's hard to say whether plant-based products are better than chemical ingredients. I mean, yes, there are downfalls of using skincare products that have more chemical ingredients inside of them. But if plant-based products have the same amount of active ingredients that you're looking for, then it may work just as well. So from my understanding, a lot of the times when skincare products are first being formulated, they actually test it on mice and rats. So, which is beyond, a little beyond me. Agreed. But because of that issue, now that's why there are a lot more products who are trying to promote cruelty-free products on the market for their line.
When you were talking about Reef whitening for the sunscreen.
Reef sunscreen?
You only mentioned oxybenzone, but if you read the sunscreen literature, the Environmental Working Group includes many more chemicals than oxybenzone.
Yes.
As toxic to our reefs and why our coral reefs are dying internationally, not just in the Pacific or the Atlantic.
Agreed. Yes, I agree. Yeah, I only talk about oxybenzone because that is actually the most, I guess, there's a lot more chemicals that may impact our reef, but oxybenzone is definitely one of them. I just wanted to focus a little bit more on that. But you are correct that there is a lot more chemicals that are embedded within our sunscreen products that can cause damage to our reef. So I am a little bit between, I want to say maybe like 5, 6 steps. So personally for me, I have a combination skin. So my T-zones are very oily as well as my chin area, and I have dry area on my cheeks. So the biggest thing for me is figuring out which products will produce less oil on my skin. So, but definitely I always perform double cleansing as well as use toner. I also have currently been using a vitamin C serum because I have a lot of hyperpigmentation and have a lot of acne scars that I'm trying to get rid of. Actually, it has been very successful so far. And I also use an eye cream and I think a moisturizer. And then sunscreen is I apply during the morning, but I don't use a night cream at all.
Thank you. Another question was, does the process of collecting skin mucin hurt the snails?
So from my understanding is that they take whatever the snail leaves behind. So it doesn't hurt snails at all. And from my understanding, it doesn't impact snails in a negative way. La Mer. So those of you in the audience who may not be familiar with La Mer products, La Mer is very expensive. I think, so this is just my opinion. I can't say it's the same opinion for everyone else who uses it, but my opinion is that it doesn't work. I think it's too expensive for what it provides. A lot of people that I know that I've talked to who have used La Mer products haven't seen any benefit from using their products whatsoever. So just because you're using a very expensive product doesn't necessarily mean that your skin will get better. So we have products in the market that specifically target active ingredients, such as like The Ordinary, which is very available in Sephora. And it's very cheap. It's only like $7 to $20, depending on what you are buying. And it works just as effective as any other skincare product that may be a little bit more expensive.
And also
La Prairie, yeah. Yes, that is correct. Yes, but this is just my own opinion. Sunscreen. So I personally don't like having a very thick, heavy feeling on my skin. I think it's more so because of my skin type, which is like combination skin. I tend to produce a lot of oil during the daytime, so I try to avoid physical sunscreens. And yes, and honestly, physical sunscreens are better for the coral reefs and it's better for the environment. But then personally for me, I think chemical sunscreens, because they are much lighter and easier to apply on, as well as chemical sunscreens, because they are lighter and thinner in texture, you can actually apply a lot more products as you want to compared to physical sunscreens. So currently I use a Korean sunscreen that's like blueberry infused, and it's been great. So.
Well, I've learned Shiseido.
Yeah.
Shiseido has 15. So is that better that you can like
15% of SPF. So if I'm correct, I should say the good thing about Asian sunscreens, I mean, there are now sunscreens that are produced within the US, specifically Supergoop is one sunscreen that is common in Sephora. So from my understanding, Asian skincare actually promotes both SPF and PA. So for you to have the best sunscreen protection or sun protection, it's actually best to use products that have both the SPF and the PA rating on the sunscreen. So if I'm not mistaken, Shiseido has both ratings on their skincare, on the sunscreen products.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you don't have to have the white junk on your nose because there are micronized titanium and zinc products.
Yeah.
Which are much thinner and you do not look like a
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there are a lot, of physical sunscreens that have evolved over the years that provide a much more thinner layer or thinner, wider cast, or may not even produce a white cast at all. But I think it's really hard to find those products because every time I look for physical sunscreen myself, unless I try them myself, I can't tell whether this specific sunscreen will leave a white cast or not. So it's a little bit more difficult. And I think that's where reviews come in when you're reviewing specific skincare products, because reviews definitely help me in helping me to decide if I want to try this specific skincare product or not. Since we don't really have the opportunity to have a lot of samples, so we can't really try it and then not use it if it doesn't work for us. So, yeah.
The toxic chemicals.
Yeah.
The manufacturers are committed to use these still, and we just have to kind of be visual to things back.
Right. Correct.
So they're not, we have to use mercury.
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah, sorry. So the question was the toxic chemical ingredients I've listed. Are skincare products not allowed to use these specific ingredients? So they're technically not allowed to be incorporating these specific ingredients into skincare, but depending on where it gets manufactured, whether it be Korea or France, when they come into the US, they actually do get screened on an ingredient basis. But if you were to buy it in a different country, and if it's allowed for that specific country, you may still find it in those specific skincare products.
What is the best moisturizer used for combination skin?
So what is the best moisturizer used for combination skin? I think it's better if I just go back. So the best moisturizer used for combination skin is actually a lotion, and it's because it feels more moisturizing than a gel, but not as heavier than just a cream in general. Oh, it's tough. I think exfoliation is a step where it's best to be done at nighttime because, one thing is we don't have a lot of time in the morning to start exfoliating our dead skin stuff away in the morning. But at nighttime, but if we apply that during the nighttime, you don't have environmental stressors that may react with the acids when you go outside. So it's just a matter of scheduling like a day, whether it be a Saturday or a Sunday, like it's just a day for you to relax and just incorporate it into your skincare routine. But too much exfoliation can also cause excess oil production. So you want to be mindful of that before doing too much. So the two most common ones that I'm aware of is avocado as well as papaya. I'm sure there are a lot more that are not popping into my head, but those are basically like masks that you can put on your skin. But compared to like sheet masks where it's literally you just dab it on and you take it off, avocado it's just an area. It's basically like a skincare ingredient that you want to target a specific skincare concern for. So it may not last too long because going back to Korean skincare, like we're fond of using cucumbers and literally just chopping cucumbers and putting it on our face to provide hydration and to look very well the next day. But that goes only for so long. It doesn't go too long. Yeah.
Another question is, can you discuss safe preservatives for skincare?
Safe preservatives for skincare. So I'm personally not very familiar with preservatives in skincare. I want to say it's just something to look out for. So I can't really comment. I don't know too much about preservatives in that setting.
And the question is, do you have a favorite skincare product? So something to skincare
No. Because my skin is like kind of combination acne prone skin, I like to use a lot of products that are better with like Centella Asiatica. So I use a lot of Dr. Jari's Skincare line. But then my target concern these days have been hyperpigmentation. So I've been using a vitamin C line from Medicube. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with that. Medicube is a Korean skincare brand. But typically for me, I like to use a lot of products that are embedded with like Centella Asiatica because I have a lot of irritation on my skin and have a lot of breakouts.
We're comparing physical sunscreen to, I guess, physical sunscreen and zinc oxide. How does the percentage of zinc oxide in the ingredient label correspond to SPF?
I believe there is probably a correlation, but I'm not too sure.
Where can we find Korean products?
So depending on where you live, there's actually Korean skincare products in Sephora. The biggest Korean skincare products you can find in Sephora are the Amore Pacific line, which is like the parent company. And then below that is like Primera and another company that I can't remember the name of. But Bliss is also a Korean skincare company as well. But if you want to find a place that has a lot more skincare products, it's actually found in Flushing. Flushing is the way to go. Yes, Roosevelt Avenue. Yes, Roosevelt Avenue. Yes.
I realized there are H marks throughout Manhattan, and they all have a cosmetic counter.
Yeah. So H marks do have Korean cosmetic skincare products as well. But if you're looking for a specific store that stores majority of Korean or Japanese skincare products, you can find it in Flushing. I forget the name. Some bunny, some beauty. So it's on Roosevelt Avenue though. Roosevelt Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juri. Sorry, no idea how much. So the CE code for pharmacists. Oh, sorry, I'm on. Yeah, let me. Are you on this? Oh, wait. That sounds good. I'm on. So the CE code for pharmacists is product, PRODUCT, and the CE code for technicians is benefit, BENEFIT. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Do you want to go to them?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to go?
Okay. So, product and benefit. So one more time. Yeah. We're gonna give a C code. Product.
Technician.
Benefit. Yeah. Yeah. So pharmacist C code is product, PRODUCT, and the technician code is benefit, BENEFIT. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Open down.
Okay.
That was great. No.